We're going to come back to 525 a little later in the morning. We are going to get to it. Let's go to 650, Klausmeier Regional Waste Disposal Facility.
Senate Bill 650, Work Group to Evaluate the Establishment of a Regional Waste Disposal Facility. This bill requires the Maryland Department of the Environment to convene a work group to evaluate the establishment of a regional waste disposal facility that serves Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Carroll, Harford, and Howard counties, as well as Baltimore City. The work group must report its findings to the Governor and the General Assembly by December 1st, 2021. The bill establishes several specific proposals that must be included in the report. There are two amendments being offered by the bill sponsor, Senator Klausmeier. The first is on page 16 of the voting packet. This is amendment number 333420/1. This amendment would push back the reporting deadline 1 year to December 1st, 2022. There's another amendment on page 17. This is amendment number 693923/1. This amendment would require the work group to look at the establishment of a regional waste diversion and disposal facility rather than just a waste disposal facility, add an expert in zero waste principles to the work group, and require the work group's report to include proposals on market development.
Is there a motion on the bill? Let's get it on the floor. Yes, Senator, and seconded. Let's deal with the amendments. I don't think they're controversial. I think everyone supports them. Any objection to adopting the two amendments? Seeing none, okay. The bill as amended is in front of us for discussion. Senator Gallion. Senator, hold 1 second. Please, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was kind of looking this over the other day and had some follow-up I'd like to look up, but this involves, I believe you said, it's kind of put in from Baltimore County. There's a letter in the folder from Anne Arundel, I believe, but it also talks about Harford and Howard counties. My question is, were they reached out to about this legislation and kind of consulted on it, or was it just put in from Mr. Former delegate, I believe, put it in on behalf of Baltimore County? Does anybody know that?
I do not. I think the main promoters were Anne Arundel and Baltimore County, who have a lot of waste and are neighboring. But I don't have an answer to your question, Senator.
Would it be all right if we put a hold on this so I could check in at least with, since one of the counties I represent, to see what their feedback is?
I'll do it, Senator, but it was on the list on Wednesday. We'll hold it.
Okay, thank you.
But the whole policy is going to come to an end very soon, ladies and gentlemen. And also, we might not always be able to give you 24 hours notice. We might have to add a bill this morning, so we're going to have to be a little more nimble as we get close to a crossover. Senator Freihester on this bill? Okay. Senator, if you can check, so if you get an answer, I might like to take it up this afternoon. If not, we'll hold it, but the sooner the better, right? It's a work group, so it's not like we're going to force something down anybody's throat. As I understand, it's not my bill, but okay. Anything else on that? Okay, that's a hold. Next bill.
Senate Bill 661, Environment, Maryland Oil Disaster Containment Cleanup and Contingency Fund and Oil Contaminated Site Environmental Cleanup Fund, funding, reallocation, and reimbursements. This bill extends the current fee, which is currently 8 cents per barrel, assessed on oil transferred into the state until July 1st, 2024. Beginning July 1st, 2024, this fee is 5 cents per barrel. The full 8 cents per barrel is credited to the Maryland Oil Disaster Containment, Cleanup, and Contingency Fund, or the Oil Fund. The bill reauthorizes in fiscal 2022 through 2026 funds from the Oil Fund to be used to reimburse owners of heating oil tanks that applied for funding from the Oil Contaminated Site Environmental Cleanup Fund, the Reimbursement Fund, on or before June 30th, 2021. There are no amendments.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Senator Lamb.
So I had brought up some concerns about the discontinuation of the reimbursement fund during the hearing. I did have a chance to speak with the Deputy Secretary for MDE yesterday about trying to find a way to address the reimbursement fund discontinuation, because there's about 100 people each year that still apply for the reimbursement fund. I'm trying to put together an amendment that would extend it for 3 years and also look at, during that last year, have the department report back to us about how they can wind down the reimbursement fund or examine the reimbursement fund to address the backlog. Because they have like 600, I think it was 600, several hundred applications for the reimbursement fund that are still outstanding at this point. I'm concerned about just winding down the reimbursement fund completely.
So I heard a couple points, Senator.
Yeah.
One is winding down the fund and the waiting list. I mean,
They want to, in the current version of the bill, it would wind down the fund. It would close the fund. Yeah. The fund is not closed out. They're still accepting applications. They're actually still accepting applications through this year. And they're getting, I think he testified during the hearing that they're getting about 100 applications a year into this fund still. And they're backlogged by several hundred, maybe 600 is what I recall. Yeah.
so, I mean, are you suggesting wanting a phase-out plan? Or do you actually have a plan?
So what I'm suggesting, because we bounced around a few ideas when I talked to the Deputy Secretary yesterday, I think they would like to have some sense of when they can phase it out. But I'm also concerned that with 100 applications coming in a year, and I'm not sure, they couldn't give me data on whether that's trending downwards or is that staying steady, that where I left it and what I was going to put together, we just kind of put it together as an amendment this morning, was a 3-year phase out rather than 5 years. I think this goes out to 2026. And then in that last year for them to study and report back to us on the status of the reimbursement fund, the trends, and what their recommendations are for the reimbursement fund at that point.
I guess my question is, do you want to proffer it now, or are you asking for a hold?
I'm happy to proffer it now, but obviously we don't have the actual language back yet. So it's up to
Okay,
up to you.
I'll come back to you. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reading from some notes I received from the advocates for this project. It says the current backlog of reimbursement application through fiscal year 26 through June of 26. But it also said that they had phased out this category of funding since 2008. So I guess your question is, you want to, I understand the backlog of cases that they got in the hopper. You're trying to make sure that we exhaust all of those before we phase it out? Is that what
I don't think they fully phased out the residential piece.
It's just
The
not
fund, the
making-
reimbursement fund was originally created for commercial, and then they added in residential after that. Now, since then, I think maybe what you're referring to with the phase out is that they phased out the commercial back in 2008, and since then they've had residential applications for the reimbursement fund continue to come in. And so now, I think based on what the Deputy Secretary testified during the hearing, they're still getting about 100 of these applications coming in per year. And so I'm concerned about just phasing it out completely with that volume. It's not like there's just 10 coming in a year. There's still 100 applications coming in each year for this.
Look, what's the will of the committee? We can allow the conversation of the conceptual amendment if people feel comfortable after it's explained one more time. We can take it up, vote it up or vote it down and move the bill, or we can hold it until either this afternoon or next Wednesday.
Sure.
I'm looking for
Do you want me
guidance.
to? Do you want me to give the conceptual again?
Is anybody against us trying to get through it and move it? You can still vote against it. Okay, I see some blank faces. Let's try it, Senator. Explain very succinctly what the components of the amendment would be.
Sure. So the fee on oil producers is going to stay the same as it is currently in the bill, which is actually just continuing on the current fee that it is. It would extend the sunset to July of 2024. It would add a requirement that MDE complete a study of the cleanup fund and efforts to replace this for aging residential oil containers, not commercial. And that the study would come back to us, would be done during the 2023 to 24 timeframe, would come back to us by January 1st of 2024 so that we could act on it for the next renewal period. So to come up with a study and a plan for the reimbursement fund. It would look at new claims each year for reimbursement over the last 3 years. So it would look at the trend data so that we know. The yearly backlog of residential oil container replacement claims for those last 3 years also. The average time that it takes for each claim to be filled, because right now it's taking years for these people that have filed the claim to actually be reimbursed. And then any recommendations to reduce the reimbursement time for residential claims, recommendations regarding the continuation of the fund itself, and recommendations to improve the state's response time for these applications.
I don't.
First, Senator Patterson, I see you shaking your head.
No,
I think you don't want to discuss it.
Yes, I think what the senator's saying over there would, unless I could see it in writing, I don't think I could fully understand
Okay,
the gravity
then it's
of
a
what you're
hold
talking
until
about.
that's written. It'll either, as earliest is this afternoon, the latest is Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that's also a hold. Next bill.
Senate Bill 673, Department of Agriculture Urban Agriculture Grant Program. This bill establishes an urban agriculture grant program within the Maryland Department of Agriculture and an urban agriculture grant fund to support the program. The bill authorizes the distribution of up to $400,000 from an unclaimed property fund to the Urban Agriculture Grant Fund for each fiscal year from fiscal 2023 through 2026. There is an amendment in your packet being offered by the bill sponsor, Senator Gallion. It's on page 18. This is amendment number 483725/1. The amendment strikes language authorizing the distribution of money from the unclaimed property fund and substitutes language authorizing the governor to include in the annual state budget an appropriation to the fund. The amendment also adds language requiring the Grant Review Board to prioritize applications that will accomplish the goal of historically disadvantaged urban farmers and requiring the Department of Agriculture to seek and prioritize input from urban agricultural farms and farmer advocates in adopting regulations to implement the bill.
Senator Patterson.
Oh,
Okay.
that's,
Okay, is there a motion to put the bill on the floor? It's been moved, seconded. The amendment is before us. You wish to move that, Senator Gallion, or explain it?
Move the amendments to. And also had a request from Senator Hester to be added as a co-sponsor, number 2 on it.
I have a question. Okay, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, why would you amend and put that word, the governor may include in the annual budget bill an appropriation to the fund? That word may, that makes it, in my opinion, very much a suggestion and weakens the bill, I think. That's my opinion. Could you tell me why?
That's a great question. The reason we're working with Delegate Wells on the House side, and this conforms it to her version on the House side. So that was, I believe this bill already passed the House in this manner. Mm-hmm. So we're just, conforming it to what she had on the House side.
Yeah. I mean, I see that word, and I think personally, it takes away our responsibility as legislators. I hate to see that in a bill that's a good bill like this. I mean, I want this program to be there to be successful no matter who the governor is and what their opinion is, but for this to be funded. I mean, like I said, I love the bill, amendments I accept, but that word may, I don't know if we could take that out and deal with the House to take it out over there also.
Yeah, Senator, sometimes to reduce a fiscal note and get it through the tax and budget committees, that's done on more than an occasional basis. This has a $400,000 price tag. I haven't floated it by budget and tax yet. I mean, if you want, you can remove that. We'll have to hold the bill until I get approval, because while we have policy, we don't write the checks.
Right.
And if we were to pass policy that ended up with, however many millions of dollars, it falls on the budget to balance it. So that's, again, I haven't talked to the House people, but my guess is appropriations told them we don't want to guarantee this. So that's probably where it came from. Senator Gallion?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a really good bill. It's a big bill. I mean, urban farming, having folks in urban areas to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, it's huge, it's big. And, this is something that we can make a statement on as a body saying, yes, let's fund this. I mean, we talk about all the health disparities that exist. A lot of it traces back to diet. And, it's like, I really would love for this to be funded, for us to find the priority, $400,000 to do that, to affect the health. Because it's not just a garden these folks will be planting. It's like the exercise and just getting out there and, turn over the earth and just, work with their children to see how things grow and where food comes from. It's not just from a styrofoam, container at the supermarket, right? So, I mean, I feel passionate about this. If we can amend the bill to make sure it's funded, this is like really a big issue for so many of the potential beneficiaries.
Come back and consider that as an amendment in a minute. Senator Washington.
Thank you, Senator Gallion, for this bill, because I often, like Senator Ellis is saying, the connection between urban agriculture and rural agriculture. I mean, I just think there's really a lot of opportunities to work together. There's so many similarities in terms of diabetes and heart disease and obesity in rural communities as well as urban communities. So I guess I wanted to ask about the may distribute up to. So if it was drafted as may, right? So I'm trying to clarify, is Senator Ellis suggesting that we amend it to shall? Is that what you were? Oh, I see. Okay. That's all. I'm just trying to clarify that. Thank you.
Senator Freihester.
I'd just like to speak in support of this bill. I originally was asked to sponsor this, and then asked the good senator if he would do it because I was at my maximum capacity. I think it's an excellent bill, and I think that's what we're hearing from the senator from Charles County. And I guess my question is, for the sponsor, do you think that that this bill has a fairly good chance of being funded by the governor? And if it's not, maybe we come back next year and put the shall in there.
Thank you. I'm always advocating to the budget group on the second with the governor's office and all to, for agriculture in general. So this would definitely be something I would advocate for, and also to follow up on what Senator Ellis said. You're totally right. It's not just about the food that's produced that's such a benefit. It's actually putting your hands in the soil, where it's just a great experience. And we've talked from when we met on freshman orientation about, you're an avid gardener, and it's a way of life for me too. So it is a great program. The cross file is what it is. I would like to keep this moving in that and keep fighting to make sure that is in there. And then if they don't put it in, I'd be fine with coming back next year.
Gentlemen, look, as I think Senator Washington or someone pointed out, the bill came in with May on page 4. The bill strikes page 4 and part of page 3 and puts that language back in on page 3. So it came in as May, and the amendment keeps the May. And that's not to minimize you'd like it as a shall, Senator, but this is not weakening the bill. Is that?
Yeah. The change that the amendments are making is, at least on the funding portion of it, was the bill came in saying that money could be appropriated from the unclaimed property fund. I think in the negotiations that happened in the House, they thought that maybe that wasn't an appropriate source of funding, but that the governor should be able to appropriate it from wherever he wanted to, or the governor wanted to. But so it's the bill as drafted and amended is both of them are Mays.
It shifts the explicit nature of taking it from the unspent money of this fund and says it should come out of the governor's budget. I mean, that's what the amendment essentially does. Senator Riley.
Senator Ellis, you are absolutely right. We, in many occasions, need to make a very strong policy statement. The problem we had is Senator Lamb had a great environmental bill last year to measure air quality over BWI. $100,000, I believe, was the fiscal note, and it was vetoed by the governor for fiscal reasons. I would like to have this bill passed for an attempt to put it on the table. If you put in shall, I'll guarantee you it's not going to make it past the governor's desk. And it's not because he doesn't want it. It's all that fiscal issue. Now, the rest of the story, we got the study done anyway. Put this on the table and let's see how far we get. And next year is a whole new year. Different finances, different personalities, pressure of elections. I think we'd have a better chance of making it shall then, but I think we want to keep it on the table at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. With that, I'm coming back to you, Senator. The Gallion Amendment amends the bill like the House, and also adding Senator Hester as a co-sponsor. This doesn't preclude other amendments, Senator. I'll come back to if you still want to make it or not. Any objection to those amendments? Okay, they're adopted. Senator, you want to proceed or not? I mean, it's your call.
Yeah, well, this is, I believe in this concept behind this bill very strongly, and I'm listening to my colleagues, and I understand position, so I will yield and not offer an amendment to this, and we'll keep looking at it to make sure and to make it stronger going forward. And, well, I would love to offer one amendment for me to be a co-sponsor of this bill also.
Is that shall or may?
Shall.
Senator Washington, I think a hand was raised for the same purpose. So it's Hester, Ellis, and Washington are added. The bill as amended, I don't see any red lights or any objections. That'll be marked as unanimous. Well, that's the first bill of the day. Senator Gallion. We pushed off 3 Democratic bills. First one's a Republican bill. Okay, next bill.
Okay, Senate Bill 689, Office of Small, Minority, and Women Business Affairs, Duty of the Special Secretary, Minority Business Enterprises. This bill establishes the duty of the Special Secretary for the Office of Small, Minority, and Women Business Affairs to include 1, establishing a mentorship program in which large and established minority business enterprises mentor startup and small minority business enterprises. 2, conducting a feasibility study for providing one-on-one assistance to MBEs and submitting competitive and successful bids and proposals for procurement contracts. 3, providing training and educational opportunities for non-minority prime contractors regarding their duties under the state's MBE program. And 4, establishing an annual award program to recognize localities that demonstrate the highest excellence in MBE support. There are no amendments.
And there was no opposition at the hearing. I think Senator Washington was moving the bill, seconded this side, Senator Patterson. Discussion. Seeing none, will anybody be voting no? And again, when I ask that question, I don't care. I'm not doing it to pressure. I just want to be efficient. That's all. Seeing no hands, that too is marked as unanimous. Next bill.
Senate Bill 692, Senator Young, State Planning, Preservation of Agricultural Land Goal. This bill establishes a state goal of preserving a total of 1,030,000 acres of productive agricultural land by 2030 through 1, the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, 2, the Maryland Greenprint Program, 3, the Rural Legacy Program, 4, the Maryland Environmental Trust, and 5, local land preservation programs. There is an amendment.
I love this EH string.
Yeah, we're curious to know, Mr. Damaris, we're curious to know what you said before you came on live.
Yeah.
There is an amendment. I forgot to. I accidentally excluded it from today's packet. I have copies if you need to see the language, but Senator Hester is offering an amendment to add the Next Generation Farmland Acquisition Program to the list of programs mentioned in the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Damaris, you need to mute until we call on you, unless you're commenting on the agricultural farmland bill, which I think is out of your scope of practice.
Can I second that amendment?
So that's what the amendment does. If you want the language, I can pass it around, but it just adds the Next Generation Farmland Acquisition Program, which is a newer program that's run by MARBIDCO, the Maryland Agriculture and Resource-Based Industries Development Corporation.
Impressive. Nicely done.
Any objection to the amendment? Seeing none, the bill as amended is before you. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Just want to go on the record to say, I don't know if it moves the bill the ball forward. All we're doing is extending the goal, and it's not for our committee to say why we haven't gotten there yet. I'm supporting of the bill, but I think the deeper question, a policy question, is what else could we do generally to achieve the goals that are aspirational? So I'll vote for the bill, love the amendment, but there's a deeper question that we're not going to handle today, but I would like us to keep in mind as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, Senator, that's, we're setting policy, and when we set policy, they're the kind of questions we should ask. I mean, I see no reason why the committee can't send a letter to the department asking that very question.
With that.
Okay, at your leisure, Ms. Morton. It's been a little crazy for her, and all the staff is putting a lot of hours in.
I'm on that joint subcommittee. I might be able to shed some light on that, on the project open space, and well, I can do it in 30 seconds.
No,
It's basically it's basically a funding issue.
No, stop. At some point over the next 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we'll work on a letter. Thank you, Senator. The bill is, I saw no opposition. It's passed 11-0 on the Young bill. Next.
Really pass, or is it? So, I mean, did it really pass? Okay. Well, I had some questions on this bill.
Look.
So I'm not.
If I move prematurely, I'm going to assume we didn't take the final vote and allow your questions.
Yeah, because my light was building. So in the fiscal, I don't understand this. The fiscal note doesn't have a dollar effect, a dollar number on it. I'm not sure. How will this be funded? How will this preservation of agricultural land be funded? This is kind of like a major issue in my county. We have a lot of agricultural land, and these programs are quite effective there. And it just seems like there are a lot of questions in this bill, the fiscal summary, and
Yes, Senator, there are a number of programs with funding sources. So at some point earlier, a bill was passed saying our aspirational goal should be the 1 million acres. Mm-hmm. And we didn't make it by the original date, so this is extending the date. It's not adding more money or not adding more money. That's not being addressed in this bill. And again, some of these programs are funded. There's another bill that comes on the floor today that adds even more money to some of those tree planting programs, but this doesn't deal with growing it, since we're talking about trees.
Yeah. So in the fiscal note, it says this bill establishes a state goal of preserving until 1,000. It says establishing. Where does it talk about just extending the deadline? Is that someplace else?
You have to, if you look at the fiscal note in the analysis, the original goal was established, it wasn't in statute, it was by a joint resolution. Mm-hmm. So it's not codified anywhere, but it was Joint Resolutions 16 and 17 of 2002, created this statewide goal of, by 2022, tripling the number of acres, which they've since sort of estimated to be a goal of 1.03 million total acres of productive agricultural land through those programs, specified programs. What this bill does, so it pushes out that deadline, it maintains that goal, it keeps it going, since we're about to reach 2022 without having met that goal. So it pushes out the deadline. The new deadline is partially, it's based off of some discussions that actually happened in that joint subcommittee on program open space and agricultural land preservation, where the various departments that administer these goals said that this is a more reasonable, based off of the rate of preservation that's happening, this is a reasonable, aspirational but reasonable goal.
Okay.
But part of the benefit of putting this in statute is it means that that the various agencies need to keep sort of accounting for this and giving progress updates to the legislature on where we are towards meeting that goal, so that you all can examine those various programs and figure out what needs to be working better.
Okay, understood. Thank you for taking the time to explain it. I apologize, Mr. Chair, for slowing it down, but I hate to cast a vote and I don't understand what I'm voting for. So thank you for giving the time.
Totally understood, Senator. Totally appropriate. Just to affirm, is there any objection to passing this bill As amended. Seeing no opposition, no red lights, that bill is approved. Next bill.
Senate Bill 697, State Procurement Minority Business Enterprise Program, Participation by Gender or Race. This bill allows a business that is certified as a women-owned business and as a business owned by a member of an ethnic or racial minority to be counted for the purpose of achieving goals under the state's Minority Business Enterprise Program as a business owned by both a woman and a member of an ethnic or racial minority. There are no amendments. I believe there was no opposition.
The bill's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the bill, no opposition. Seeing no red lights, no hands, I will assume that is unanimous and no objection, so be it. Next bill.
Senate Bill 703, Procurement Minority.
And I'm going to interrupt. A number of these, again, came from Senator Griffith's work group. So a number of these have. And, you know, I didn't know, it was an informal group. It was not a standing group. But I just want to note that without defining it as such. Thank you.
Senate Bill 703, Procurement Minority Business Enterprises, Qualification and Certification. This bill requires that regulations governing the state's Minority Business Enterprise Program require certification of a business as an MBE if the business provides, without any other paperwork, evidence that the business has obtained certification and remains certified under a federal disadvantaged business enterprise program. The bill makes a conforming change by repealing a requirement that such a business must also meet the eligibility requirements of the state's MBE program.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second discussion on the bill. Again, I don't believe there was any opposition. No, there was not. Discussion? Seeing none, will anybody be choosing to vote against this bill? Then it too will be marked unanimously.
So Senate Bill 785, State Board of Education, Membership and Terms, Capability and Capacity Study of Education Agencies. This emergency bill requires that, in addition to teacher and parent member, the governor must appoint members with specified areas of expertise and backgrounds. The bill also adjusts the terms of board members such that the governor must appoint a new member or reappoint a current member on or before January 1 of each year in which a member's term expires, and clarifies that all regular member terms begin on July 1 after their appointment. The bill further requires the Accountability and Implementation Board, in consultation with the Department of Legislative Services, to contract with a consultant for a study of the capability and capacity of state governmental entities to carry out their duties and to implement the blueprint for Maryland's future. The governor must include in the annual budget bill a sufficient appropriation to conduct the study. The AIB must submit a preliminary report of the findings to the governor and the General Assembly by December 15, 2021, and must submit a final report by September 1, 2022. There are no amendments, and there were no opposition at the hearing.
Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved. It's been seconded. Excuse me. The bill's before us. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think this is a really important bill, and we need more education professionals serving on our State Board of Education, and some job descriptions or parameters I think make total sense. One of the things that came up in the hearing was the question of geographic and ethnic gender diversity and stuff, which the President agreed with. And sorry, you guys keep swapping seats. And yet we don't have that amendment. Is it the President's preference that that get assumed or not handled on this bill? Or can that just be wedged in the
The amendment, so if you want to make an amendment, then you have to offer the amendment.
So, okay, sorry, there is boilerplate language, I think. If the committee can generally just say yes, and Stacy can draft that, or I don't think we ought to hold it to the floor. It's pretty basic, non-controversial stuff. I'd love to bring a completed package to the floor. Stacy, isn't there just sort of reasonably boilerplate language that we could put in there?
Any way you can pull something up so people know what they would be voting on?
Sure. Let me find something here real quick.
Senator Carozza, while Ms. Goodman's looking up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's along the same lines as our Vice Chair. I had just was interested in if we were covering locals enough. I was looking at page 3, lines 7, 8, and 9. Maybe that's where we're covered at the local level. And then I also wanted to ask about, I also wanted to know about the parent member. There's only, as I understand it, there's only one parent member, and on page 4, lines 5, 6, and 7, if any consideration would be given to adding a parent member and to strengthening the local representation.
Look, we're open to amendments. It took us 3 years to get a parent on the board, and a parent in the PTA. And I'm sorry, isn't that what?
Right, no, but add a teacher.
No, yes, that was right. It took us 3 years and I think a number of vetoes to get a parent and a teacher on the board. And this is, I think we're completing the first year of their membership. So again, we'll entertain any amendments. So the Senate President didn't choose to take on that issue of adding teachers or parents, rightly or wrongly. All I'm saying is we have the bill that's before us. And again, anyway, let me stop there. Hold that thought for a minute. Ms. Goodman?
The standard boilerplate language would be something to the extent of, to the extent practicable, the members appointed to the board shall reasonably reflect the geographic, racial, ethnic, cultural, and gender diversity of the state. That's pretty standard.
I'd like to move that amendment in the, wherever that goes in the bill.
Discussion on the Kagan amendment? Anybody object to it? Okay, the Kagan amendment is adopted. Senator Carozza, back to you if you want to proffer an amendment. Here's the chance.
I wanted to first, Mr. Chair, deferring to you if you believe that the issue that I have about making sure there's appropriate local involvement, if you think that covers it with 7, 8, and 9. And when I say local, it looks to me that what they're saying there is that they want someone who's either a former local superintendent or it says school system, so I think that could give you anywhere from a teacher to, well, no, it says administering, so I guess that would be for an entire school system. Is that pretty much, do you look at that and think that's where you would appoint your local school superintendents?
Well, I'm going to leave that to the council. I'm not an attorney.
Include people who are being regulated by this entity on the board itself. So in this particular case, I think that's why it took so long to get the teacher member, is that they are highly regulated by this entity. So in this case,
would it be a former local school superintendent?
No, I think they're trying to cover what you're asking for by having this particular body of knowledge. By, for example, where is it here? Knowledge and expertise in multilingual instruction, expertise in instructional programs, adaptations, and supports. Those are all individuals generally within a school system, and they're looking for them to provide that specific expertise. You could, obviously you could make an amendment that said you wanted a former a member of a local board or whatnot, but I do know that on the board now, there are members who have that experience. They are former members of local boards and whatnot.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of a former school superintendent who's actually run a system as opposed to a board member who obviously have authorities, but, I'm thinking the value of, for instance, a Dr. John Andes, who was our, former Worcester County school superintendent, that the expert, so I think I had that position in mind thinking, and I didn't know by looking at that language if that covered it or not.
Well, if I could,
Page 3, lines 7 through 9. 2 members shall have experience in successfully administering public school, a school system, or an institution of post-secondary education. So in that particular case, you're looking at either a former superintendent, a former principal, or an administrator in a community college or even a larger institution.
And in my mind, I think there should be at least one member who has run a local school system. So if we think that covers it.
it was just explained, it's a little more general than that. I mean, if you want to make an amendment, let's cut to the chase here.
Okay, I would like to offer an amendment that whether it's in this section or wherever, that there be at least one member who has served as a local school superintendent.
Is there a second? Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak against the amendment. I think, a former superintendent could be someone who is retired or taken a job in another state or another jurisdiction. I think this could be hard to find. I think this is an important step forward. As the chairman said, it takes a while to get these changes made. This is really, we've got to get more professionals on, and goodness knows, superintendents through PRSAM, the Public School Superintendent Association of Maryland, and through their own personal relationships, as well as through us, are engaging with the State Department of Education every day. I don't think this amendment is a good idea.
Okay. Let's go to a roll call.
Is this on the amendment? Senator Kagan?
No.
Senator Lamb?
No.
Senator Hester? No. Senator Ellis? Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Washington? Senator Riley?
Yes.
Senator Patterson? Senator Simoneer?
Yes.
And Senator Penske?
No.
4-7.
Okay, the amendment is defeated. The bill as amended,
And I wanted to offer another amendment.
please.
I would like to I would just like to add an additional parent to the membership. I guess it would go under section, page 4, line 5.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just reading. Second on the amendment?
Sure.
Okay.
I have a question.
The amendment is before us. It's adding a parent. Senator Riley.
So the good senator said an additional parent. Is there one already on the list?
Yes.
Okay, and how many total are on the board?
There's one parent recommended by the PTA that
Right.
the governor appoints, and one teacher.
Right.
That's something we adopted a couple of years ago.
Sure. But how many on the total board?
13.
13? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, as co-sponsor of the bill, can you answer whether there's anything that would preclude the diversity representative, the multilingual instruction representative, the disabilities representative, the nonprofit representative, or any of the other representatives on the board, including a teacher, from being a parent, just as a human being?
Yeah, of course not. And not only those characteristics, the ones that are listed on page 2 and 3, knowledge and expertise on management of a large business, education reform. I mean, it's likely there will be numbers of parents.
So could we then require at least one of them have their child in the school system when we have all these other classifications? Why wouldn't we just at least make clear that at least there would be one of those would be a parent who has their child in the school system?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to it if I could. Senator, look, I'd be more than happy to add a parent, but I can tell you, once we start down that path, there are going to be other people who are going to want designated positions. And again, maybe it's the right thing, maybe we should have another teacher. I think it's very likely that some of these others will have parents in public schools out of 13 people. The first one, obviously, is recommended by the PTA, the organization that speaks for parents, although we know there are lots of parents who are not members. Conceptually, I'm fine, but I want to be careful of designating too specifically because there'll be a line out the door of people who want an amendment to add this or add that. So while I don't disagree, and on another day, another year, I might support that, I just don't know if now's the time, that's all. But that's my view, that's all.
So instead, could I amend my amendment, instead of an additional member of all the, as you start on page 2 on line 15, and you go through, this member has to have this, experience in using anti-racism and equity principles. This member has to have successful management, with a nonprofit, large vision. Like with all these others, it seems to me in all of that, we could just at least make clear that at least one of them would be a parent that has a child in the school system.
So, Senator, that's how it's constructed right now. So the language on page 4 in lines 3 and 4, there's not a specific member appointed to the board. It just says one regular member shall be a parent of a student enrolled in a public school in the state. My understanding of what your amendment was to amend that language to make sure that 2 regular members shall be parents of students enrolled. So there's no designated member. It's just a requirement that one of the people who is already on the board has to have a student enrolled in a public school. Is that your amendment or understanding? Is that what you wanted?
My amendment would be with all these new members that
they're not new members. We're not designating any in particular. I think it's saying one member shall possess, but it means some members can possess multiple of those. So we're not designating per se. It's more of the members who are appointed have to have all of this collective background and knowledge. That's how it was constructed.
Well, my understanding is there's a parent member.
No.
And what I'm saying is with all these 13 people, that at least one of them.
That's a misunderstanding of the law. The law is that one of the regular members appointed has to have a student enrolled in the public school. So the parent isn't a designated member, as in there's a parent on the board, but a member who is on this board also has to have a student enrolled in the school.
And I may have misspoke, so I might have added the confusion, but one has to come with recommendation from the PTA and advice and consent.
That's only the teacher member.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the teacher member was added. If you look on page, let's see here. So as we see here, except for the teacher and student member, any individual subject. So only the teacher and the student member have a specific different way of being appointed, and the rest are just kind of general members of the board. There isn't any specific qualification.
On line 5 through 7 on page 4, it says the governor shall appoint the parent member with the advice and consent of the Senate from a list of 3 qualified individuals submitted to the governor by the PTA. So that one is done fairly explicitly.
Correct.
And there, as was said, there could be more. And Senator, the other thing, this bill is prospective, but actually the State Board of Education said at the hearing, they feel they already cover this, that even their existing members would fulfill these descriptions, even though it doesn't apply to them and it's not going to remove them. So, but again, you can forward any amendment you want. So
So the amendment is on the floor. Are we voting right now?
yeah. Okay. So the amendment is to require another parent from those described, but it is not required to come through the PTA, I think is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I appreciate all the background on this, and I understand it was a balance to reach this product, but if this amendment does anything, it would be to, I think, keep a sensitivity of that, of the role of the parents and there's no better way than to have that child in the school system and then have that parent on this board. So that's why I'm pressing the amendment.
Further discussion. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose this amendment. First off, if it's an additional person, it changes from 13 to 14. It's of the 13. Okay, so
Yes.
I've already given my reasons for those. I'm just going to say that if this amendment were to pass, I think the next amendment is making sure that there's someone representing the LGBTQ community, because they have serious problems and challenges in the school system. And I think if we want to start putting everyone in the box, I've already spoken to this last week, 2 weeks ago, I think it's a bad idea. We should have the most qualified people, whether or not they've ever birthed or raised a child, if they're passionate about education and they're willing to volunteer their time in service to our state and our state's public schools. Bless them and let's welcome them. We have a bite at the apple through Executive Nominations Committee. I oppose this amendment.
Further discussion. Seeing none, let's go to a roll call. Further amendments to the bill? Senator.
Did you or the lead sponsor take into consideration the department's request for not clarification, but adding some important aspects for the positions? They asked if someone who served on a local board, they thought that would be a valuable experience, that they could be considered as one of those. Also adding in their mental health or physical health program experience, and then also implementing successful digital learning programs. They seemed to be, valid criteria. I don't know if anybody considered those.
I haven't spoken to the lead sponsor about the amendments, but I don't see a set of sponsor amendments, so.
Is that? They seem, to me, I just read the department's suggestions, and they have the amendments basically in there. I don't know if that's something the committee would consider a friendly amendment, or if that's not where you guys want to go, but those seem like appropriate qualifications. Not saying you just have to have those, but they could consider somebody with those expertise. So I'm looking for guidance on that.
I don't want to speak for the Senate President. I really don't know his view on this. I'm of a mixed mind on these kind of things where you define it too much. It gets hard to find people, and you have other people who say, but you left me out. And so, I have to tell you, and I'll be very honest with you, I'm not enamored with some of the state board members. But yet the state board said all of these characteristics are covered. So I'm not sure how this plays out, to be very honest with you. I'm not sure I want to potentially confuse it even more. So
Okay.
I will probably
just-
vote against it, but I don't have a principled stand of saying I don't want someone with more technical knowledge. I mean, I want people who can help have a vision for improving our school system. And the last couple of years, I've been very disappointed. I'll be very frank with you. I spoke with the 24 local superintendents, and they felt adrift on health issues, on instructional issues. So to be, I don't know if this is going to help us forward. I hope it does. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. I think we need to give it a chance. I assume the Senate President thought it out. I'm just not ready to add amendments to it, and that's me speaking personally for myself.
All right, I won't offer them, but my only concern is that the way this structure is set up, and I share some of the concerns that you mentioned. This is limiting, and I just don't want to limit people being able to serve on the board because they don't fit in a certain box, and I think that's the challenge. But I won't offer those amendments.
Senator, just so, I do understand, and Senator Goodman, Staff Gooden, she gets the vote. Some people might hit 2 or 3 of these categories. It's not like all 13, you have 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. Some people who've been on a school board or a principal or superintendent, they hit 3 or 4 of these. They've done innovative reforms, they've done management. So anyway, so it's not like it forced everybody into a box. There's some people who take care of 3 or 4 of the boxes.
Just had a question on the comment made by Senator Simonaire. And that is, you touched on 2 things that are personally very important to me, mental health and, quality online education and the tools to do that. And so my question is there anything in this bill that prevents somebody with expertise in those areas for joining?
The bill as amended, there was one amendment. Discussion on the bill as amended.
One more thing. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was just clarifying with council on the list of diversity attributes. Sexual orientation is not in there, and because of harassment and torture and bathroom questions, and we just did menstrual, access and all that. I'd like to suggest, I am not going to suggest that we add someone who is a member of or familiar with the LGBTQ community, but I do think when we say that it should reflect the diversity by, could you read the list again, Stacy, please?
To the extent practicable, the members appointed to the board shall reasonably reflect the geographic, racial, ethnic, cultural, and gender diversity.
So I'd like to propose an amendment to the amendment that language includes sexual orientation or sexual identity or whatever, both of those, whatever the most appropriate language is that should be included to reflect the diversity of our state. Is there a second for that amendment?
Second. Discussion. Excuse me. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Simonaire.
Yeah. If we're going to go down that path, I'd like to have an amendment after that to put religious in there as well.
I'm only speaking as one.
Further discussion. Anybody who has not spoken like to jump in the conversation?
I just want to say that it's a friendly amendment to my amendment. I'm okay with that because I think the Muslim community has issues, the Jewish community has issues. I actually think that's a good suggestion. And if that's something that the senator wants to amend to my amendment so we vote it once and move on to other bills, I'd be okay with that. If you want to do it separately, we could do it separately. But I support that.
Okay, the amendment before you is to amend the amendment that we adopted, adding sexual orientation and religion. Senator Gallion.
So does this kind of run to the same thing we were talking about with the possible parent amendment where you're just broadening things out a little? Can't this be worked in the 13 that are already there without these amendments? I'm just asking.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's an important question. Thank you, Senator Gallion. To be clear, this is not a new person. This is not an addition, and this isn't a slot. And it says, to the extent practicable. So while you're picking a nonprofit person or a parent or a business person or a community leader or the teacher, to the extent practicable, those people should reflect the geography, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation of our state, the list that Ms. Goodman read. So it could be that we end up with 13 white guys because the extent possible wasn't possible. But I think making sure that there's an awareness that there is a diverse state, a diverse population, will better be reflected on the state board.
Yeah, I'm going to call on myself. And with all due respect to the vice chair, this could potentially set up a situation where you've got to ask a possible nominee what your religion is, and are you gay and straight? I don't know. I think the bill could have lived with without the First Amendment. I supported it. I'm starting to get concerned about going down a rabbit hole. I believe in sexual orientation and religious freedom, and I have some reservations though about implications. That's all.
I did have one small amendment I wanted to add. Okay.
Hold it. This side of the room is having a problem hearing the vote from that side of the room. So. Motion is that's passed. Senator Fry Hester, you have another amendment.
Yes, just a small one to eliminate any potential confusion. On page 3 of the bill, somewhere in Roman numeral 7, 8, 9, I'd really like to include either a digital learning platform or online education. I think this is the way that our world is going, and that we need somebody with expertise. Everybody's going to have expertise in the classroom. I feel like we need somebody with expertise in the kind of online digital space.
There's a second, so the amendment is before us, adding.
Digital learning platform.
Okay. Discussion. Further discussion? Anybody object? Okay, it's adopted. Any other amendments? Do you want to be added? The vice chair wants to be added as a co-sponsor. Anybody else want to be added? Okay. The bill as amended. Anybody object to the bill, or will be voting no? Okay, then it will be marked as amended unanimously. Okay, we're going to go back to Bill 525. That is the first one on your list. We took this up on Wednesday, and there was discussion of amendments. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to give you guys a brief update. We do not have the amendments yet for the committee, but there were some of the areas that I flagged and some others asked about as well during our voting session that I discussed. I talked to both the sponsor of the bill and the president's office, and Ms. Goodman is going to work on amendments, and so when we get those back, we can explain them and share them for your consideration and vote.
Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Well, wait,
whoa. I thought you wanted to
many were
discuss
there?
what those amendments were, and we'll just incorporate them in the other amendments.
Oh, I didn't know you had them ready already.
They're not ready. I had a conversation with the representative for the president's office this morning, who said you had a conversation and that you were going to bring to the committee your thoughts on these amendments, and they can be incorporated into the other amendments.
okay, what, I mean,
I'm happy to share them. I just didn't want to put the unreasonable additional pressure on the council, so I'm happy to share them with the committee. Of course. Sure. Absolutely. If people have their, let's see, I think the page numbers might have changed. If you have the old voting list number 15. Okay, page 3 of 5 of the bill, at the top, lines 1 through 3. I am.
Ms. Goodman, again.
If you go to page 10 in voting list 18, that's the start of essentially the reprint for this bill.
Okay, so
Okay.
page 10 of your packet.
Which is still page 3 of 5 at the
I've got
top,
I have
lines
2
1
of
through 3. Page 3 of 5 of the bill, on page 11, is the first thing we talked about. We talked about how the State Board of Elections will provide Baltimore City, so it doesn't talk about who should pay for it, and so that's going to be, I suggested that that be clarified. Further down.
What it is.
Sorry?
Tell us what the change you want is.
So I think there was conversation that it should be a 50-50 split, as all drop-off boxes were. I don't feel strongly one way or another. I think it should be clear. I also think there's an argument that the state board should pay for all of it because
Okay,
residents
we're
could
gonna
be.
hold till we get the amendments.
Okay. I have answers. Okay.
While we're doing this discussion, it is my understanding that there are several buildings in this complex. Is the Baltimore City Centralized Booking Facility one of them, or does it comprise several of them?
I am not an expert.
Now, that is a question I don't need to know. I think we need to know, but not just this moment. And if it's several buildings, or even if it's one building, are folks in the facility allowed to go from one floor to another in order to get access to the box? And especially if there's more than one building, will they have the ability to get the paperwork to the box? I don't want to rely on the correction officers to be mail people and inter-office people. So I think logistically, we need, as a committee, more information so that we can accurately describe in our bill what and how we want to do it. And just so as we go through the amendments and we go through the future discussion, love to have more information about that logistical so we can shape the bill appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Goodman, in the interim, can you get answers to those questions?
Yes, I just want to point out that part of this bill is a framework, and that the facility and the state board are supposed to have a conversation and discuss how the logistics are supposed to work with the box. And then the state board will adopt regulations that talk about how the box is supposed to be used in this location. So just when you're thinking about if you want amendments to this bill being overly prescriptive, since there's 2 expert entities here who are supposed to get together and have that discussion before this committee considers putting too much requirement or too explicit a requirement on how an officer is supposed to get somebody to the box versus how the Department of Corrections thinks it's most appropriate to get individuals in the facility to the box to use it in the way that they're supposed to use it.
Okay. We will get answers to that, but I do want to underline that we're a policy-making group. We're not necessarily an implementation-making group. And on some of the things, regulations are promulgated and more details are done. So it's a fine balance. We don't want to leave too many things to question. On the other hand, if we get in the weeds on too many bills and become the experts and try to figure out how each one is implemented, we'll get through about 8 bills when we have 150. So, and again, I'm not saying it's all one or all the other, and I think these are totally appropriate questions.
They go back to cost. If we are allocating costs, and it's 1 box or if it's 12 boxes, I don't care, but as long as we have an understanding of the fiscal impact. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, but I'll get to you. We're not setting precedent for the state. I know there's at least one other bill talking about how much the county should pay, how much the state should pay. That has not come before us. There's been a policy in the state for a number of years. This is the Baltimore, although it has prisoners from elsewhere, booking facility. People have not been convicted. So it is very specific in nature. It is actually a local bill to some degree. So I don't think we should take this local bill as precedent setting for statewide policy. We have other vehicles to take up that issue. I had Senator Land, then Vice Chair.
Yeah, and my question actually had to do with that last point that you were talking about, because it seems like we do have some broader bills. I know Senator West had a bill on correctional facilities and voter registration as well, and you do too. Are those going to be looked at later, or how might this fit into those bills? Because I don't want to preclude or handcuff us in some way.
That's a bad pun.
Sorry, straitjacket us in some way.
I don't want to hold up certain bills. There are some big policy questions we have to talk about. Clearly, all these bills have to go to the House, and if we have to conform them or have them meld together, we have plenty of steps to do that. I mean, look, if, for example, we say the state should pay half and the local should pay half for these 2 drop boxes, I mean, we're talking,